Hi folks, today's video is about how to do an ink drawing in the style of Rembrandt. And as everybody knows that Rembrandt was one of the greatest artists in the history, and some even consider him as the greatest artist that ever lived. That this statement has come from many great people, so there is some justification behind that. I take learnings from Rembrandt's portraits, as well as his figure drawings, his stories, his humanity. All of these things are unignorable, and I don't think, apart from Van Gogh or Millet, there has been too many artists who were able to show the humanity and also the stories behind the characters that he painted. This is not a recent discovery, but I was a fan of Rembrandt's ink drawings, and I'm particularly interested in sketching a lot. Most of the time, I draw with my fountain pen and pencils on in the sketchbooks, but recently I thought, why not paint in the style of Rembrandt and use it to my advantage, and maybe I can learn from Rembrandt's techniques, because it's very abstract and it uses very diluted colors. Sometimes there are very thick colors, so it's very similar to what I do. So I think it is going to be a useful exercise here to see if I can use his technique into my works. And I'm not going to copy his drawings, but will try to take cues from his drawings, some of the elements, and probably see if I can deliver something similar. And for this purpose, I got myself an ink. So this is a very cheap ink, but it has got pigments, and this is the same burnt sienna pigment that I use almost every day in my oil paints, poster colors, watercolors. And this is a color drawing ink. There are from Camel or Camlin. There are many different colors available. Most used, I think, are the black, but I prefer to have this brown color. And there, I think, maybe a few more similar colors, but this is the color that I liked. And um, and also I find that this color is similar to what I see in the Rembrandt's drawings, so this should be fun. And good thing about these inks is that I think there is some pigment in it. Most of the time, fountain pen inks have dyes in them, and they are more watery. But this, I think, is very heavy compared to what I have in the fountain pens. Already have a nib pen, so this is very cool because it has got feather, and there are various nibs. This is the smallest, I think, so I'm going to use that. There are many other nibs available, so there are many brands like this. So let's not just waste too much time over products, and let's enhance our skill and see if a master's technique can be used to our advantage. Okay, so I'm going to use one or two paintings of his, and let's just, use a very diluted color that I have, diluted ink, and let's just pretend that, and it's going to be a very light color. It's not going to be a very, it's going to be a very light color, and this is like one of his houses. Okay, so I readjusted the camera and the angle a little. Now here, important is that this is a dip pen, and dip pen has a reservoir inside, so it needs to store the pen. So since this is slightly more angular, I'm I have to paint it like this a little to adjust the situation. But I'm going to use the sharper tip to draw the sharper lines. So this is how it works, and it needs a little bit of adjustment from my end. So these are sharper lines, and I'm going to return the perspective and copy this house from his painting, or from his drawing. I keep calling it a painting. So his drawings are very rapid. I mean, if you care to look at them, it's very abstract. If you could paint impressionistic, if you look at impressionism, you will notice that there is much. His paintings are very similar. This house slightly continues. This looks a little strange because I'm holding it like this, but this sort of a pigmented ink, this pen can hold it for a long time. But generally, a pen is not to be held like this, so it looks a little strange. But you can see that, I'm drawing exactly the way Rembrandt drew, and this is it. So we are going to look at this a little later. Only thing is that when you're drawing with pen and ink, it's important that you connect the lines. For instance, there are some gaps in between. You need to have them connected, especially the darker areas. Otherwise, they will look disjointed. No matter how sketchy your work is, your lines need to be connected. It looks slightly strange, but now you can see we have made some progress into it. So I can draw like this, there's no problem. And there is some sort of an extension. Don't hold ink pens like this. I'm just adjusting because of this particular video. They are to be held in the normal manner. So this is what I feel is the end, because that's the only part that I can see in the drawing. He didn't draw the whole stuff. There is some, and that's it. He has left all of these areas absolutely abstracted. And let's just let it dry a little, because this is waterproof paint, and it's going to, if it dries, then it won't be rejuvenated. But let's just focus on other areas, what I could do with this. This is not Rembrandt's drawing that I'm copying from. This is what I'm doing it on my own, maybe taking some cues. Here's a pathway that comes to the house, and it's going there. And maybe there is some, there are some cloudy areas. I'm also correcting some of the aspects and looking at the drawing. But let's just use a brush and some diluted ink that is watered, and let's create tone. This is a beautiful tone that I'm getting. I feel this is absolutely dark, and here my focus is just to create some amount of tone, that's all. And this part is receiving some light. And this area of the house, I'm using more saturated ink. In this part, this part, this part, this area in the house will receive less light. I'm just creating shadows, that's all. When you do ink wash from life or do pencil sketching, always squint, because otherwise it will be difficult to see the lighter areas. Always do squint, because it will be easier to see the darker areas, and darks will be connected like that. Let's just darken this area because there is some obstruction. I'm assuming the light is coming from that side, so let's just darken this area a little with more diluted paint, or rather ink. So this is a nice burnt sienna color, and let's just darken this part, assuming this is evening light, so there is every chance that the lower part of the horizon should be darkened. This is just a pot with some ink. So there is your wash. Now with more saturation, I'm going to create some layers here. I'm just having fun today, no pressure, just trying to understand how to work in similar fashion. Maybe just darken some areas here. So this is almost like watercolor. Okay, so this drawing has now dried. You can use your hair dryer or ceiling fan or room heater, anything. But now this is some definition, and let's just build upon it. And it seems that there is a tree somewhere around here. He used it very casually, so I'm going to do the same. Scribbly marks, that's what he used. And here are some branches. So this is also a very innovative way and a great learning, that if you have to draw like this, then you can turn it upside down, the nibs, and it'll just do its work. So these are very scribbly lines, and we are going to darken them a little later. So very similar to watercolor. And there are some marks. I'm just going to darken them, darken this particular area, assuming that this part is not receiving any kind of light. While doing the ink drawing, it's important to understand where the shadow starts from and move towards the direction of the light. Here I am drawing in a very odd way, but otherwise, if you see my ink sketches later, if I allow them to be seen, then you will realize that I start from the darkest side and then gradually I move to the lighter side. And as I've mentioned before, the darks need to be connected. Otherwise, painting or drawing will look very disjointed. It seems there is a window here. Let's just do a window. So this is a Dutch scene now, a genuine Dutch scene. And this paper is not capable of holding too many wet marks, so I need to dry it again later. But let's just focus on other areas. And this ink is actually very cheap. Camel is known to produce good quality materials at an extraordinary price that is unthinkable. In Sennelier, etc., Winsor & Newton, all of them are in 300 rupee range, whereas this is in 50 rupee range. And I have, and many artists like me all have used through generations and for the last, you know 5 or 6 decades, I think, if not more. I've been using this brand for 40 years, so it should be more than 40, obviously. So this part is not receiving light. I have darkened it. Let's just add a little bit of cross hatching. I'm doing it very casually, no intention of uh, creating a very beautiful scene at this moment, because it's very difficult to draw like this. But still, there are some scribbly marks, etc. I don't know what are these, but just, and here is some sort of a shade. And there is a church tower. And here are some random marks. I'm just using them. Here is some sort of a foliage. I don't know where it is, because I don't see these things in Rembrandt's drawings that I downloaded. This is just a sketch, so we can use these kinds of lines. Here I'm connecting the darks. Let's just work on the sky a little, maybe a few lines to make it homogeneous, very similar to what we see here. Here are some bricks. Just add a little scribbly notes. Let's just add a few tones here and there. Maybe we can add a tree here. A few birds. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use full strength ink so that things appear a bit darker. This is just full strength. I'm just drawing with this ink. It's very similar to painting, there is no doubt about it. Let's just add a little bit of tone here. Few dashes. As you can see that it's possible to do drawing similar to Rembrandt's, and here I just devised a composition that is similar to his, and you can do the same and learn from the master's technique.